So, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar on developing future leaders alongside our partners at Huddersfield Town Football Club. I'm Michael Carson, Group Commercial Director for Libra Europe Consulting, and I'll be our host for the next hour or so. So before I introduce our fabulous speakers this afternoon, just a few bits of quick housekeeping. The session is scheduled for around an hour. We've got about 35 minutes of material to present, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. As you can see from the running order on screen, we've got some really interesting content to cover, so hopefully that'll prompt plenty of thoughts and questions. And on that note, we do have a chat function on your Zoom bar. If you'd like to drop some questions in there as we go, we'll answer as many of them as we can at the end. If you could direct them to the host, Alex will collate the questions as we go along. And questions we don't get a chance to answer, we'll follow up after the session, but hopefully we can get through a few at the end. And then finally, everyone should have entered on mute, but if I could ask everyone to make sure they stay on mute throughout, just to avoid any background noise or interference, that would be great. Thank you. So, admin out of the way, let me introduce you to our speakers for this afternoon. So first up, if you just move the slide, Fran, please. Lovely, thank you. So first up, we have Ben Davis. Ben's our Managing Director of Libra 3E, which is the Learning Development Wing of LEC. Having worked in both L&D and consultancy, Ben has a passionate belief that current accepted conventions in workplace learning are in need of new thinking, and that there must be a better way. Ben will talk to us today about apprenticeships, L3E's unique approach to addressing that need in the market. Next up, we have Lance Kieran. Lance is L3E's Director of Programmes for Leadership and Management and is currently leading the programme with the cohort at Huddersfield Town. Lance brings a wealth of experience in leadership development, having worked with a number of FTSE 100 companies. Lance also brings a unique lens on leadership with his background as a qualified and practising psychotherapist. Then on to our colleagues from Huddersfield Town who've kindly joined us today. So first up, we have Zoe Shackleton. Zoe is the HR manager for the club, having joined 2.5 years ago. Prior to joining the club, Zoe spent 14 years in further education roles and is a chartered member of the CIPD, and also holds a master's degree in human resources from the University of Leeds. She leads the HR function at Huddersfield Town and will talk to us today about the need to invest in leadership capacity and the benefits the club have seen so far. And then last but by no means least, we have Robin Kennedale. Robin is Supporter Services Manager for the club, whilst also a member of the current Leadership Development cohort. Robin has been with the club for 15 years and has held a variety of roles and is now responsible for developing supporter relationships aimed at enhancing the overall experience for Terriers fans. Robin will be sharing her reflections on the course to date, having enrolled in September last year. So, without further ado, I will hand over to Ben to talk to us about apprenticeships and how the levy works.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Yes, hi everyone, Ben Davis. So I'm the Managing Director of Libra 3E, which is Libra's Training and Development business unit. I'm the warm-up act. I'm not the main event, I'm very much the warm-up act. Now, some of you will know this and some of you will be less familiar. One of the reasons that I'm speaking is I just want to put everyone on the same sort of playing field, which gives what Lance and Zoe and Robin are going to be talking about a little bit of context. So please forgive me if this is all common knowledge to you, but I'm sure there are some people who would benefit of a refresher. So just a few definitions to start then. So first and foremost, what is an apprenticeship? It's a program of learning funded by something called the Apprenticeship Levy. It's a program of learning that occurs at work that happens over at least 12 months. Okay, so the idea is it is a long-term learning endeavour. So I mentioned apprenticeship levy. That's just one of the focuses of this topic. So what on earth is it? Well, it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's a levy on UK employers, ostensibly to fund apprenticeships. And that's what it's for, and that's what it's doing. So what the levy is a replacement for many years of government initiatives trying to incentivize private industry into investing in training, and the government has now decided to use more of a stick approach. I wouldn't say it's a particularly sort of violent stick, but actually forcing companies to set aside some form of budget to pay for staff development in this world. And why are they doing that? So this thing is well meant. There's a lot of bad press. Something I'll return to again and again is I think Levy has an image problem. But the entire policy objective was well meant. Now I've pulled this off the government's website about Levy, and it is worth reading in full. So what is it about? The Levy is about boosting productivity by investing in human capital, developing vocational skills, and increasing the quantity and quality of apprenticeships. They want to put employers at the centre of the system, and employers who are committed to training will be able to get back more than they put in by training sufficient numbers of apprentices. Now, I believe that's all true. Some of you may differ. Your mileage may vary, as they say in America. I believe that's a very noble endeavour. But again, how they've done it, how they've rolled it out, I think we can all agree has been a little bit lopsided and a little bit weird, to put it mildly. But there is a good heart behind it, and it can work. Okay, and there are lots and lots of examples I could give you where companies have invested heavily in it and they've got an awful lot out of it. Again, not going to go into massive detail on that, but let's just have a quick look at how it works. So just for those of you that don't know, 0.5% of a company's salary bill, where that salary bill is over £3 million, is levied and sits in a digital account. That digital account cannot be accessed by that business, but they can look at it, they can sort of see it through the sort of the armoured glass and pour at it, and they can, what's the phrase, authorise approved, vetted providers, such as Libra, to draw down on that funding to provide aforementioned apprenticeship programs. So it's worth saying less than 2% of UK employers actually pay this levy, and as of last year it is open to everybody. That, you know, up until last year there was some sort of, there's a two-tier system going on, but thankfully now anyone who wants to be is able to access this digital account system and reserve funding. And even if you're not a levy payer, you still only pay 5p in the pound for that funding. So it's a fantastic value for money initiative. Going on just the apprenticeship theme, as of 2020, they finally removed this idea of framework. So the old spectre of the MVQ has finally sort of been put to bed. Not a moment too soon, in my opinion. But all apprenticeships are now standards. So what is a standard? You will see this word bandied around a lot again and again in industry. A standard is a course for an apprenticeship developed by the employers themselves. We are moving away from this idea where the awarding bodies, by colleges, by learning institutions, manage and dictate in many terms what is applicable knowledge, skills, behaviours for a given industry. Okay, I think it's fairly enlightened that government has actually worked with industry on this, and they are allowing industry to build the qualifications that they need, and that's very, very overdue. However, has it been successful? This is a statistic you might have seen. So the levy pot nationally is about, it's hovering around £3 billion a year. That's not an insignificant amount of money. So 2019 is the sort of one of the last complete numbers we have. Total levy spend, so the amount of levy actually spent with training providers in that period was 864 million. That's an awful lot of money sat there going towards, you know, whatever Dominic Cummings's next trip to Durham or whatever it happens to be. So just by that metric alone, you could say the levy isn't working, and a lot of people do. A lot of the sort of educational press, the trade press, a lot of unions, a lot of private employers say levy doesn't work. I think it doesn't work in many ways. I think in general it is a good initiative and it can work very well, very well. What I believe is that it has an image problem, and this just comes from the narrative. If we go to the next slide, please, Fran. We need to change the frame of reference about apprenticeships and about apprenticeship levy. Yes, it is a tax. You know, the word levy means tax. Yes, it is a tax, but then again, it's a tax is universal. It's, you know, everybody, once they get to a certain size, has to pay that. So let's actually think about how we can turn that into a source of competitive advantage. So the way I'd like you guys to think about levy and apprenticeships as a general rule is, as my friend Postman Pat there is sort of showing you, it's a delivery mechanism. The knowledge, skills and behaviours are not anymore controlled by, you know, awarding bodies, universities, those institutions. You can describe, you can work with trailblazer groups, you can work with industry, you can work with training providers such as ourselves, and this is where sort of the dovetail comes in. You can work with training providers to actually build a program that works for you. Too many times, I think recently, the apprenticeship levy focuses, and the narrative of the government focuses on individual endeavour. And the word apprenticeship itself is about an individual, and to me it conjures up sort of images of going to the local blacksmith and learning how to shoe horses. I think it's a poor word for modern workplace education, because again, apprenticeship, you think young people, yes, that's a huge policy area, but it's open to everybody. And you know, our specialism, many businesses' specialisms in this space, is about working with employers. You are the guys who pay this. You are the guys who put this money aside, and just like any business interaction, you would like a return on investment about this. So let's do that. Let's change that frame of reference to not it's a tax, to that's a ring-fenced training budget and we can do what we like with it, you know, within certain categories and certain reasons. But by and large, as it says there, you decide what's in the box. Okay, we're going to talk about leadership and management programs in a minute. You know, the stuff we're doing at Huddersfield, we have designed and built that program, as Lance will go into, to focus on the elite sports industry. It's still a leadership program, but there's an awful lot of stuff about elite sports and how that program works in that frame of reference. You can do exactly the same thing for a food factory. You can do exactly the same thing for a wholesale distributor. You can do exactly the same thing for the back room of a bank or a building society. Yeah, we have a lot more freedom now than we used to have with the MVQs, a fantastic amount of freedom. Because again, the industry is now self-governing. The awarding bodies have had that taken away from them. Okay, EPA organisations focus more on justifying the training to the standard rather than slavishly following a tick box exercise. So I'll give you a quick example about how that sort of can play out. If you can move the slide on, Fran. Thank you very much. So what we often see is in companies, doesn't matter what sector, what we often see is different strata of management will be focused on different things as a general rule. Low-level management will be focused on, you can't quite read it there, I do apologise, but low-level management on the left-hand side, they're generally focused on regulatory or just compliance, getting stuff right, okay? You go a little bit above that and the focus, and there are lots of shades of grey in this, but the focus generally shifts when you go step up a level to delivery and quality goals. Then you might start talking about finance in a greater way, margin, etc. It's only when you get to really the top of the company, board level, director level, where people really start having a serious think about the cultural goals, the behavioural goals of the company that they are leading, because they are leaders. I reject that. I think behaviours and cultures should be pervading all the way through the hierarchy. People should think about their effect on the culture, and people should think about how their actions and how their skills and behaviours drive that culture that goes all the way through the company. Yes, the tone might be set by the higher ups, but it does filter all the way down. So what are you waffling on about, Ben? How does this apply to apprenticeships? Well, you can actually, using that flexibility that I've talked about, you can use these apprenticeships now to focus on a program that works for you as an employer, be that cultural change, be that productivity increase, be that efficiency increase, be that cost reduction. What I would urge you to do is think about, what are you trying to cause? That's one of Lance's favorite sayings, by the way. What are you trying to cause? What needle are you trying to shift? And use apprenticeships as a strategic delivery mechanism to do that. Because as I said, it's a ring-fenced budget. It's there for you to use, but it's not immediate. It is a sort of a long-term thing. So rather than transactional apprenticeship providers saying, oh, we will do 1 or 2 food engineering or this or that, or we will do 1 or 2 customer service level 2s, or the you know, improvement standards, or 1 or 2 leadership, what have you. What I suggest is think about it in holistic terms and go big. Actually think about a common thread throughout your organization, common thread of change, how you want to apply that change, and deploy apprenticeships en masse, as you can see on the right hand side there, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. And so you get that critical mass of change. And those apprenticeship standards, they're all focused on that one outcome that you are trying to drive. They're all looking at it in a slightly different way because they're different levels. But that's really what I want to sort of try and get across to you today in my little rant, is that don't think about these in individual terms. Think about this as a strategy piece that has a definitive, tangible outcome for your business. And that's it from me. And Lance is going to talk to you about how we've done that with our friends at Huddersfield.
Thanks, Ben. So when asked the question, why leadership and management development, my thoughts turned to Albert Einstein and a quote he is alleged to have made. In that the problems that we face are quite often partly created or wholly created by our current way of thinking and doing, and that to resolve those problems, we need a different perspective. It takes that new perspective, that new piece of knowledge or new skill to enable you to see the problem or challenge in a new light and solve it. New thinking leads to innovation and possibilities. When I reflect on the performance of organizations and how well they respond to constant change, yet in some cases continue to perform at their best, learning is central to their way of being. Being open to possibilities, being willing to try something different, learning is the path. And learning is a lifelong journey. It isn't the case that what you learn by the time you're 18 to 21 is sufficient to get you through your whole career. As we all know, to further our careers, to keep ahead of the game, we must look for new ideas, new inspiration from numerous sources. Anyone that knows me also knows I love to learn. I have always loved learning. For me, it is what makes every day different and interesting. Learning and teaching, therefore, is a potent combination. So if we apply Albert Einstein's view within a business context, directing the learning towards the business problems, we are introducing a little bit of genius into our businesses. Next slide, Fran, please. Thank you. So how do we look at an organization and evaluate its effectiveness? Well, in many ways, like everyone else, we teach many effective tools and techniques that have stood the test of time, and of course, new techniques. I suppose the big difference for me is that we come at learning with the ambition to develop resilience, both organizationally and within individuals. Relationships in the bigger sense of the word is key to developing resilience and is given great emphasis on our courses. Our relationship with ourselves, with others, but also understanding of the interdependent nature of business, the connectedness, the consequences, cause and effect of the different dimensions of a business. You get the relationships right between all of those dimensions, organizational resilience builds. If we look at the triangle on this slide and reflect back on how our careers started, we all started in the delivery triangle, personally achieving through what we could do. And as our careers progress and responsibilities broaden, we migrate up the right-hand side of the triangle. The speed at which we progress along that dimension is largely dictated by the ability to engage with others, making those bigger connections, delivering performance through others, giving great emphasis to that relationship dimension we believe accelerates progression. Next slide, Fran. So I talked earlier about the emphasis we place on establishing the purpose of the program, or as I like to put it, what we are trying to cause as a business, resolving problems, driving aspirations, It is so important for the learners that there is an overarching context and applicability to their learning. Otherwise, the process is too abstract and nothing really changes, other than individuals have a greater knowledge base than they did before. So, as well as ensuring that the learners understand the journey they're committing to, we also ensure that learning is tailored to business needs, as Ben talked about earlier. As you can see from the slide, after a comprehensive onboarding process, we structure our leadership and management development programs around 3 cycles of learning, namely personal effectiveness, interpersonal excellence, and business mastery. We believe program learning starts with the self, understanding ourselves, how we process, how we think, how we present to the world, developing our own self-awareness to the way we operate and our styles of leadership and management. It's a crucial first step. For the greater one knows oneself, the easier it is to understand others. Interpersonal excellence takes the learners on a journey into a deeper understanding of how to lead and manage others, the importance of values, building teams, coaching and mentoring, performance management, building relationships, are all key components of being able to engage and lead others within a meaningful context. By this time, we know each learner very well and can tailor the business mastery tools cycle to complement their previous experiences and understanding of subjects such as project management, ops management, finance, risk. Next slide, Fran, please. So in summary, we look to understand what the business as a whole is looking to achieve or cause, and align the learning to achieve those goals. We work not just with the learners, but ensure there is visibility and engagement across the business. Every learner is on their own journey, and we work closely with them on a one-to-one basis as well as in groups, so that we build on their experiences to date. It's all about relationships, making those connections, knowing how to make a difference and build resilience. I would now like to hand over to Zoe, who can give you the Huddersfield perspective.
Thank you, Lance. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'd like to talk through what I think are the 5 key points of how we've got to where we are today. So just starting with organisational requirements and that investment in leadership capacity. So when I joined Huddersfield Town, I took the time to get to know people and to make an assessment of what was working well, but also what I thought could be improved. And that included an assessment of leadership capacity. After about a year in post and having organised leadership training of a different nature, I felt it was important to try to implement an extended and more detailed form of leadership training, with the added element of the individuals working towards and achieving a qualification. The qualification and the associated skills and knowledge enhance what those individuals can offer to the organisation. So we hope that the investment reflects how much we value them and want to support them to progress. The programme also aligns with succession planning and developing managers' capabilities, although you don't have to be a manager already to be on the programme. We've got some people who are not already managers, but they are aspiring to become so over the next few years. It's important to ensure that we have managers who are equipped to manage and develop their teams. If that was solely the remit of the HR team, which is basically just me, we would be quite limited as to what would be achieved. Making sure we have a flexible workforce with leadership skills at all levels gives us a competitive edge and aligns with our strategic goal of being a developer of people. With regard to the programme being affordable while adding value, that's the real appeal for us of using the Apprenticeship Levy. Affordability was an overriding consideration for us. If we were to run the programme and we didn't have the Apprenticeship Levy, it really would be cost prohibitive. It's costing about £100,000 for 15 people to take the course. We've got 10 people on a level 5 programme and 5 people on a level 3 programme. We have to pay into the levy scheme, so it made sense to use that money to invest in our own people and ultimately our organisational performance. And if we don't spend that money, we lose it. With regard to how the programme is adding value and has already added value, I think I always believed that it would, but it was also important to gauge whether there was actually an appetite within our employees to access this training. And Michael and Ben understood that, and they worked with me to offer some initial workshop sessions that our staff could attend to find out more about the programme, ask questions and really understand what the commitment would be. I'm sure, you know, Michael and Ben and Lance would all kind of reinforce how many times I said we've got to make sure people know what they're signing up to. But the number of people who signed up to one of those initial sessions, that really reinforced to me that there was both interest and a need for us to invest in this training, and that it would add value in many ways. So the Libra Europe consulting approach and why this works for us. The team, hopefully you've got a bit of an insight into the team already today. They're friendly, they're interested, they're really considerate and have been throughout of what we want to achieve at every stage. They've really taken the time to listen to what I thought the priorities were and have adapted the course content to reflect and meet our needs. They've all taken an interest in me as an individual, as well as that interest in others involved in the course. It's a very professional relationship. Throughout the lockdowns, which kind of slowed things down a little bit at the start, we maintained regular contact. They've been very patient. We've had regular check-ins. They take feedback, what's working, what could be done better or differently, and they're very interested in how our staff are finding the programme. It's a really, really good collaboration. One of the things I was conscious of was the amount of time the participants would need to dedicate to the course, and to ensure that their line managers also understood the requirement for 20% of working time to be off-the-job training. So between me and the Libra Europe team, we took every opportunity to reinforce to the participants before they signed up what that time commitment would be, and to make sure they had their line managers' full support. We were also very clear that anyone who enrolled will be making a commitment to seeing the programme through to completion. I think this clarity was really important to manage expectations from all sides. I also think it's beneficial that Lance, who's delivering the programme, isn't from a football background. I hear people use the expression, "that's just football," quite a lot. And frankly, I can find that a little bit irritating because it suggests an acceptance of things that might not actually be okay or appropriate. Lance brings different perspective and is very skilled at asking why we do certain things and unpicking the how, which encourages the participants to engage in much deeper reflection. And I think because he's entirely neutral, it has more impact and is not perceived as criticism. I would say that planning is essential to making the programme work, and we were all mindful that the situation with the pandemic could be changeable. When the programme started, we were able to run face-to-face sessions at the stadium, and those were working really well and giving people a chance to see colleagues they might not see very often. But we had also discussed what might happen if we went into another lockdown, which of course then became a reality. So moving to remote delivery hasn't been as much of an issue as it might have been, because from the outset we had anticipated we might have to do that. The team have been excellent at covering all the bases and keeping the programme going, and we all agreed that keeping that momentum was really important. So what have the benefits been so far? Well, we're 6 months into the 18-month programme. The course participants are very enthusiastic about what they're doing. They're learning new skills and getting the opportunity to work with others in the organisation. Moving away from a silo mentality that sometimes exists, because it can be difficult to think wider than your own department, especially when we operate across 3 sites. We've really seen changes there in how people are thinking. The participants are sharing best practice and experiences with others across the business, and the course has given the opportunity to do that. I think they've also got a better understanding of others and their roles and the challenges that people face, and they're all starting to think about how they can adapt to get the most out of their relationships with other people. I think when you start something like this, you've got an idea of what you want to be different and better as an outcome. But that's not just about how the individuals are performing in their job or how they feel about the club. First and foremost, it's about them as people. And for me, one of the most rewarding things is seeing people's confidence growing and noticing subtle changes in how they're approaching different things. There's something really special in that. I hope that being able to offer this course reflects how much we value our people, as I've already touched on, and that we want the best for them and their personal and professional growth. Hopefully it's motivating them to want to do their best for the club and in their current job or any future job. With regard to future plans, we're already making plans for a second cohort, and we will be running the information giving sessions again in the near future. I think it will be really interesting to see what impact the first-hand experiences of the current cohort have on future sign-up to the programme. Instinctively, I think there will be healthy interest in the second incarnation of the course. I'm also really excited to explore other programmes that we might develop and deliver through Libra Europe, which could potentially be leadership training for the senior management team, which might take on a slightly different guise. There are so many opportunities we can explore, and now that we've got such an excellent relationship with Libra Europe, I really want to keep that going. I can't really imagine working with anyone else, as the team really do understand us and what we need and how to achieve those things. I'll now hand over to my colleague Robin, who I'm sure will share with you her personal experiences of the programme so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to give you some of my own reflections on the course so far and the benefits that I've seen from a personal point of view. So the Libra course involves bi-weekly sessions on different topics relating to leadership and management. These began at the stadium in September, but as Zoe said, now we've moved to remote delivery. Each session lasts roughly about 3 hours, but that is made up of direct teaching and our own individual learning as well. So Lance will go through the topic with us, introduce us to the theory around it and any associated assignments, and then we will go offline and do our own research and then regroup and discuss as a team. And then away from the weekly sessions, we're also encouraged to apply the learning on the job and evidence where we've used the skills and reflect on them as well. I would say that the style of delivery differs quite a bit to any other training that I've been involved in the past. Just because with this course, we have the opportunity to speak to Lance whenever we need to, really. He is always available for a Teams call or a one-on-one discussion, whether that's about the course specifically or an assignment or just generally for advice. Usually with the training that I've taken part in the past, you don't really get that opportunity to build a rapport with the tutor beyond the session itself. And there's not often that much opportunity for feedback on what they've taught you and how you've applied it. I also think there's been a real effort made to tailor the training to be specific to our industry where that is appropriate. And that just takes some of the theory, which can sometimes be a little bit abstract, and it just brings it to life and makes it a bit more relevant for us in football and the kind of work that we're all doing. The way that the course is set up as well means that I've got the opportunity to learn alongside other managers across the football club and the foundation and share experiences with them. Zoe's already said it, but the situation being like it is for us all, it's really not that easy anymore to collaborate and engage with colleagues outside your own small area or department. That's the same for everybody at the minute. So the course has given our cohort the chance to do that, and I think that will only benefit us and make some of those relationships stronger in the future as well. Personally, I would say that I've drawn on elements from all of the modules in my role so far. For example, fact-based decision making, time management, performance management. I especially enjoyed the module that we did on organisational culture and values, just because of how nicely it dovetails with the work that we do as a club and foundation on diversity, equality and inclusion. Lance will attest to this, but I was so daunted at the thought of the coaching module because I've just had no experience in that before. But it did push me out of my comfort zone and challenge me, but I think it's the case that you get out what you put in, and you do need to be committed to seeing it through and trying new things. My confidence is definitely growing for being part of the course. There are a lot of things that I used to shy away from, things that I don't still particularly revel in doing, like talking on a live webinar, for example. But the course reminds me that the directors have invested in me and in my development, just like they have with everybody on the course. And hopefully I do have something valid to offer and to say. Again, on a personal note, I've benefited from the fact that the sessions have been adapted like they have for remote delivery, because otherwise I would have probably been prohibited from joining in. Like many of us, I'm at home at the minute, and I also have a 4-year-old son. So trying to fit in phonics and literacy around engaging with fans and learning about the hierarchy of needs theory and things like that. So I appreciate the effort that has been made to make access to the course and access to the work itself as easy as possible. If I was asked how the course has helped me to develop my team and the club overall, I would say building relationships and communication is a crucial skill for any leader to have, but obviously it is key to working with football supporters in my particular area. They are our biggest stakeholders, and to be honest, we are very fortunate to work in an industry that our fans are different to the typical consumer. They wouldn't dream of changing teams like they might consider changing supermarkets, for example. So we need to make sure that we're respecting them and engaging with them and communicating with them. So by developing skills like relationship building, conflict management, active listening, mediating, that's really important for the entire organisation, as well as for us acting as a support function across the departments too. I would say that I've learned so much about myself, my own leadership style and preferences and methods of communication. Lance said it, but I think personal resilience is a really important quality to have, especially at this current time. So by gaining that better understanding of myself, I am learning what I believe constitutes a good leader to be, and reflected on what kind of leader I am now and how I might want to be in the future as well. I've learned that everybody has got different preferences, ways of working, motivations, individual traits, but having a knowledge of those will enable me to empower my team and get the most out of people in the future. I think the way that I work is more purposeful now. So genuinely, before I start a task, I'll think, is this actually a good use of my time? How can I work a bit smarter? Is this something that I could delegate to somebody, and how? Or do I need a bit more information, and who could help me with it? And reflection after the fact is just so important to learn from what you're doing and improve, because working in football, again, it's 100 miles an hour. There's one match day, one Saturday, and then a couple of days later we're straight into another. And I don't always think that either we get the chance or perhaps we don't make the time to pause and debrief on our actions, but that is something that I'm definitely taking the time to do now. I think the course has helped me to adapt to some of the challenges currently faced by the club and for all of us. For example, working remotely and managing a team remotely, which is something that everybody's navigating at the moment, and probably didn't think at all a year ago that that's the kind of thing that we would have to be doing. Finally, I would say being a part of the course has encouraged me to think more strategically, but also beyond just my own small part of the football club. So the next cycles of the course focus on business mastery, delivering on strategy, finance, project management, all fairly new skills to me. So having that diverse skill set is only going to help me and all of us on the course in the long run, as we progress through our careers, hopefully still with Huddersfield Town. Thank you. I'm going to hand back to Michael now, who is going to cover a brief summary before we move into any questions and answers.
Lovely. That's brilliant. And thanks to all our speakers this afternoon. I'm sure you'll all agree, some thought-provoking content there. Just before we summarise, just a reminder, still got an opportunity to drop questions into the chat bar at the bottom. We'll pick up as many of those as we can. But just reflecting on, I guess, the last half an hour, just picking up on a key takeaway from Ben. I just want to quote something Ben said at the top of the show. Levy is designed to deliver you a package of knowledge, skills and behaviours that you decide upon. So thinking back to Postman Pat, what's in the box, you decide, and then build nicely into what Lance talked us through in terms of understanding the importance of programmes being founded on a solid solid understanding of the business need and the business as a whole. And then from there, building those relationships and understanding those connections, really understanding what we're trying to cause collectively. And then just to summarise some of Zoe's thoughts, if you want to change something, you have to do something different. And by taking a different approach, hopefully you've seen today, Huddersfield Town are seeing both individual and collective success at the club. And then from there, we just heard from Robin firsthand about some of the successes that she's seeing and how the programme has helped her grow in confidence and provided practical help in a number of ways, from being purposeful to time management, to having that ability to reflect as a leader, both in her current role and where Robin wants to be in the future. So hopefully we've had a few questions come through. I don't know if, Alex, we've got any in the inbox to pose?
Yeah, yes, Michael, I do have a few. First question is, how have you managed to deal with the current COVID situation and restrictions?
I can probably answer some of that, and I'm sure Lance will chip in. I think I touched on it in my presentation, that we did sort of factor that in really to the initial planning when we were getting close to the actual commencement of the delivery. It was really important because we'd just come out the first lockdown and things were opening up a little bit more. But I think we were just all mindful that the situation could go backwards, which ultimately it did. So all of the participants were quite, well prepared for the what if of, if we couldn't have face-to-face sessions anymore, what would it look like? They've all been brilliant, to be honest, about adapting to that different style of delivery, the remote working. I think some of them actually prefer it to the face-to-face sessions. There's never going to be a one-size-fits-all, but I think because we'd started the programme, that kind of decision of do we carry on or do we postpone it and then pick it up, it was dead easy really, because everybody was getting so much out of the programme. Stopping it was just the complete wrong thing to do. But I think it goes back to planning. You've got to kind of do the what if. It's almost like a risk assessment approach, and then you know what you're going to do if the worst case scenario happens. Over to you, Lance.
Yeah, I think it was important to say that it was very helpful that we were able to launch the programme in a period where we could get people together, because obviously a key thing we want to cause is to start developing those relationships across the cohort, as well as me getting to know individuals better. But when it came to having to teach remotely, I understood each learner's situation and also who they were working with. So we were able to design the assignment work so that there was an appropriate degree of collaboration in certain where we could get it. So as much as possible, getting people to work together on things within the constraints of that particular period. But yes, it's rolling with it really, making sure that working back to making sure that we hit the learning outcomes and the skills outcomes, and being imaginative.
That's great, Lance. I've got a related question as well. One of the attendees has commented that I believe remote working is also cost saving. Will this be a long-term solution?
I would say that it's down to, as we said earlier, we work with the client to determine what is the best route for them. If remote learning works in that case, then that's what we'll do. We will flex our style depending on what the client is looking to do. I do personally think that there is something lost by not having some level of personal contact. But that doesn't mean to say that you have to do the whole course face to face. It can be a mix, most definitely.
Okay, thank you. Another related question, actually. Do you feel that remote learning has impacted on the progress of the group in any way?
Does anyone? I can answer. At this point, no. I think that I think the effort that we put in at the beginning to make sure that the learners who have signed up to do it were committed has paid dividends. You know, they really are a first-class group in that the assignments, they get a lot of work to do and they keep up to date with it. So no, it hasn't affected progress. And I think the big part of that is, as individuals, they are very committed to the programme.
I think just to build on what Lance has said, I think this refers to any learning programme really, but the more you put in at the front end to work with people and prepare people, as Zoe said, exactly what they're signing up for. Yeah, very often you will have training providers who just sort of turn up, do sort of a 2-hour discussion and say, this is great, sign here, with people not really fully understanding the implications of a 12-18 month learning intervention. You've got to sort of really set out what people need to expect and to get them excited about it. Everything works better with volunteers, and everything works better with people wanting to be there. And you know what? If everyone wants to be there, as Lance said, the impact is substantially lessened. There is always a little bit of an impact, but if people want to do it, they will find a way.
Just to add to what Ben and Lance have just said, I think one of the reasons that the progress, in my opinion, also it hasn't been impacted is because it's not just Lance delivering the programme. Of course he does, he delivers the sessions, but there are so many other people involved in the programme, on the edges or more than that at times. So, I ask for feedback from the participants and then I'll share that with Lance when that's appropriate. Other line managers have been asked to feed into, their assessment of how people on the course are doing and are they seeing any difference in how they're working. So we've kind of got an ongoing dialogue with lots of people involved in that, which is helping to keep people on track. And if they're struggling, then there are more people than Lance who can help, pick them up and keep them on track. So that kind of holistic approach, I think that works really well, because it's not a case that we signed up to working with Libra Europe and said, there you go, get on with it, deliver us some outcomes. We've got to have some input to that along the way. And I'd like to think that's what we've been doing.
Okay, that's great. And I've got one last question, unless anyone wants to drop any more in the chat whilst they're answering this. How do you manage the 20% off the job training?
Being absolutely honest, that was one of my real concerns before we started, because I've worked in a number of industries myself, and they're all different, but like Robin said, in football it's 100 miles an hour and it can be relentless. So when you've got a fixture and that's your priority, how is that person who's maybe a physio or a coach, how are they going to plan in that time to commit to the course? I think there's probably been some weeks where that's maybe been a bit more of a challenge for some people than others, but they do have to log their hours. So there's a taught session that contributes to the 20% of the job training, but you can be really creative in how you apply that. So it's not a case that you have to dedicate a day per week, if you're full-time, let's say, to the course. It's about using your knowledge and your skills that you're learning on the course in a way that you wouldn't have done before. Lance can probably explain that a bit better than I can, but I think just having that clarity of the expectations at the outset, it did really help. And they do have to record their hours, which I think focuses their mind on actually having that time.
Yeah, there's certainly you pick on certain learners, they have a very fluid work life, and so the way I set the assignments is they get a window to get it completed, so it gives them a level of flexibility around when they do it. It's not a case of I set them an assignment, I have to do it by the following week. There's there's a flow that we follow, and there's a connectivity between the different assignments. So in some cases, a piece of work builds over the course of a few sessions. So yeah, it's making sure that we design in that level of flexibility to allow them to complete things when they are able to, when it fits their work schedule.
It's also worth saying that in leadership and management, their work schedule and their off-the-job hours do substantially overlap, because we are not teaching them a trade. We are teaching them skills that relate to interpersonal relationships, how they lead and interact with others, and their job as a manager is to interact with others. So if Lance, Robin mentioned things like having difficult conversations and stuff like that. So actually having a session about having difficult conversations, and then Robin actually either practicing that or actually having those discussions in her day job, she is getting benefit and practicing that skill. That is a legitimate use of that 20%. So it's not like sort of teaching somebody how to weld, where they have to literally go and weld a practice piece off the shop floor. The cohort here are using their new skills in their day-to-day job. So as long as they are reflecting on that and writing down in their log that they are sort of utilizing these skills in that meeting or this meeting or in this upcoming conversation or in this appraisal, then actually the 20% infiltrates every single aspect of their work day.
Okay, so a few more questions have come in, so I'm not letting the panel off just yet. First question that's just popped up: is there a legacy or continued opportunity for participants in terms of involvement with Libra after the programme courses are finished?
Ooh.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I want us to continue the relationship. So if it's a case of Lance and the team still being around in Huddersfield, then the answer to that is very much a yes from me. I guess that's maybe something for the participants to discuss with Lance as to what that ongoing relationship might be. But I'm very much open to suggestions. Just, I hope Evan doesn't mind me saying, but Evan is a participant on the course as well.
Does he want a job?
You want a job, Evan?
Just like anything else, we want to build partnerships with people, and learning should be entertaining, it should be fun, and it should be something that people want to do and carry on with. So just because you're doing a level 3 course now doesn't mean that by the end of that, that's it. It's not like school where you go, right, that's it, school's over, you're into life now. It should be, right, what can I do with my level 3? Can I do a level 4? Can I do a level 5? Can I jump disciplines? I want to do this course, I want to do that course. So certainly we want to support people, we want to build partnerships with our client companies and support people on that journey. The whole point of this webinar is the leaders of tomorrow. So if you're doing a level 3 leadership course now, we'd expect to see you on the level 5 next year doing something a little bit more in depth, or it might be you take a year off and then do it. But it's a longer term thing. It should be boosting you for the future.
Question directed to Ben. Is there a cap on how much a business can tap into the levy, regardless of employee headcount, or is it based on X amount per head?
No, not really. No, I'll tell you for why. It's your amount of levy is dictated entirely by your headcount and therefore by your salary bill. But if you go overdrawn in your levy, you get the same rules apply as people who don't pay the levy. So you are expected to only top up 5p in the pound of anything you are overdrawn of a certain month. So I'll give you an example of this. We were doing some work, very glamorous, with a dog food manufacturer, and there was only about 150 people on site. And they had very, very little levy, and they'd spent it on engineering apprenticeships, 2 engineering apprentices. And we were a long-term consultancy house working with them anyway, and they had a burning platform problem in that they were had a production line that wasn't working very well, and their client was threatening to pull the business away if this production line didn't improve because they were constantly shorting. So this company, a bit cash strapped as a lot of companies are at the moment, said, well, we can't afford to pay for a consultancy. So we said, have you thought about apprenticeships? And they said, well, we've used our levy. And we said, well, that doesn't necessarily matter. And they went, well, what do you mean? So we talked them through this thing about this 5% rule. And it seems almost unethical, but it's absolutely not. It's in the government guidelines. It is an official rule that if you are overdrawn on your levy, you can still draw down on levy. Because go back to my initial slide, there's £2 billion sitting there. And if that doesn't get spent, it gets absorbed into the exchequer. So they're trying to encourage people to spend it. So this company put 25 of their workforce on an apprenticeship, level 2s, level 3s, level 4s, level 5s. So the factory manager was a level 5, there was a level 4. This was continuous improvement, not management, admittedly. And all these people used this production line as a part of their project, as part of their apprenticeship, to get the efficiency back up, to solve their business problem. If we put a consultant in there to do the job we did, it would have cost them £120,000, and it would have cost them £120,000 in levy. It cost them 6. They'd already spent their levy. The program is completed. We got their OEE, their efficiency up from 60% to 80%. The customer is happy. They've got another contract, actually. They've expanded it. But they got all that support and only paid for 5% of the cost. So that's actually something that a lot of companies are leveraging now. If they can't afford, and this is why I say think big, because the support is there. The government wants this levy to be spent. Yeah, because every year that someone says, oh, there's not enough levy being spent, it's a bad press for the program. So what they're saying is spend the levy, use it. The support is there.
Next question. Do you allow other individuals not on the course to attend any one of the masterclasses?
We not at the moment, but that's certainly a possibility. I mean, the cohort, it would have to be with the permission of the cohort if somebody else joined for a particular session. But certainly there's things in training. We are thinking about how we can launch individual masterclasses on specific subjects that are open to wider audiences, yes. But that wouldn't be a levy funded program. That would be, they would be standalone.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, go on.
Lance, yes, it's we have to take into account the learner's needs, but as a general rule, we don't see any reason why people should be excluded if they happen to be in the area or in the business and they've got time. It's bums on seats, as they say. Why not give them the extent of the knowledge, as long as it doesn't impact adversely on the people who are actually meant to be on the course.
I'm guessing this one's to Ben. Only 30% of the apprenticeship levy funding is utilised. How can this gap be closed?
They've already started by making it more available to smaller businesses. So as you can see, only 2% of the businesses in the UK actually pay levy. The vast majority of SMEs don't pay, and the 20% rule is a problem. It is a problem in many sectors, not so much in ours, continuous improvement, management development. The 20% rule is a bit more flexible for us. But so those two things first and foremost, making it available to everybody. So smaller companies can tap into it now. For the first 2 years, they couldn't. They had to reserve funding in a very different, convoluted way. And yeah, basically, oh, I've lost my train of thought now. Where's it gone? No, it's gone. That personally as well, I would relax the 20% rule. I think about wording it in different ways. It's very laborious to track and sort of keep tabs on that from an ESFA perspective. And how else would you do it? There is an argument for utilising the apprenticeship levy for smaller courses as well, for shorter courses, because the 12-month window does put a lot of people off. So could you use it for accredited courses in manufacturing, for example, so health and safety, IOSH, all that sort of good stuff that needs to be done. Why can't we use levy for that? There's an argument on both sides.
Okay, just conscious of people's time, so there's one more I'm going to drop in. Do you do level 7 leadership and management?
I mean, another one for me. We don't, for the simple reason that you have to be a university to offer that.
Okay, that's great. Then I'll pass back over to Michael. Thank you for those questions.
Lovely, thank you, Alex, and thanks again to our speakers, and especially thanks to Robin and Zoe for joining us from Huddersfield Town, and thank you to everyone for participating as well. Some really interesting questions there. But yeah, if you've got any more questions, or it'd be really good to stay in touch with those that have attended. You can see our contact details there, email, social media. And then just to finish off, we've just got a little 90-second video just to play us out, just to hear from some of Zoe and Robin's colleagues at the club and how they're finding the course as well. So thank you once again for joining.
It's nice to be working with a Huddersfield firm generally as our hometown, but Huddersfield Town in particular. It's exciting and really makes you proud.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be out there on the pitch playing. As I got older, I realised I wasn't quite going to make the grade as a professional footballer. The next best thing is to be able to work with your own football club.
Libra Europe provides management training that delivers real behavioural change at an organisational level.
You know, what we're doing isn't football related specifically. It's very it applies across every industry.
And the apprentices could see what they're learning and the skills and the development programme that they're going through, that it would apply to their colleagues in different departments in the club. You can see it applying across any business, any field really.
But it's a fantastic course for me that I enjoy everything on it.
Yeah, it's been really beneficial for a few reasons really, I guess.
The course itself is so kind of flexible. It's not just centred around football or clubs.
I'm quite new into management, so I think it's just giving me that opportunity just to take that step back and not rush at things 100 miles an hour, where in previous employment I would be spinning 6-7 plates at once.
This has actually forced us to speak to each other and share some ideas, and like the coaching stuff we did, which was quite powerful, with members of staff from across the different departments, which has been good.
The knowledge and everything I've gained straight away from Lance within the small amount of time we've been doing the course already is huge.
Kind of puts a belief into you and makes you think that you can do these things.